Hey, this is Andrew Krabschetz, and welcome to The Pipeline. I have a newsletter that a lot of people have enjoyed reading, and we thought maybe some conversations with business owners who are really thinking about how do you engage the world around you, not just to make money, and making money is a fantastic thing, but we want to go beyond that. How do you bless employees? How do you think about your business totally different than I think the world around us has been thinking about business really for the last several decades? So I am thrilled, yay, verily, over the moon excited to bring Camden Spiller on this conversation. Camden, I could go on for a very long time about his list of accomplishments, but he is the CEO of Maddox Industries. It's Maddox Industries.
Yeah,
Maddox Industrial Transformers, to say
there
it
you go.
correctly.
Yeah.
He is also involved in Veritas Surgery. He has a small mountain of children that are
Only 10. 10.
yeah, only 10, but it feels like a small mountain, and he's just getting going. And he's involved with his church and his community in Battleground, and he's really thought differently about business, and I've learned a lot from Camden. So I think you're going to enjoy this conversation, and so we're going to jump into it. Camden, thank you so much for
Thank you.
taking some time out of your busy day to
Oh, thank you.
talk to me.
No, I'm honored to get a chance to catch up. I appreciate those gracious words of introduction. And no, I've enjoyed your newsletter and a lot of the content that you've put out over the years with Red Balloon. Was very excited about the launch of Red Balloon. I think we were one of the early customers. That's been a great blessing to our employees and our business. So no, honored to be here. Thank you for having me
Okay.
today.
Well, amazing. Okay, well, I want to jump into this. So, many of you know, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area during the dot-com era, kind of in the 90s. Got to work for a dot-com, and like everybody wanted to be a millionaire by the time they were 20, and they wanted to drive a Lambo, and they wanted to do the whole dot-com era. And then that all kind of fell apart. And then we got into the 2000s and early 2000s. Like I feel like everybody in business that I was talking to wanted to build a business that was not profitable, that was
Mhm.
merely trying to grow at all costs. Think of it like
Right.
a bodybuilder that is jacked up on steroids, grow at all
Mhm.
costs, and then get a huge exit, and then
Yeah.
retire at the age of 35, and I don't know what, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I don't think that's the biblical way to think about business. But I'd love to hear
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
some of
No,
your
we're
thoughts on that.
That's great. No, and this has been very much a development in my thoughts over the years. I was a part of a company before founding Maddox that we sold to a private equity group and got to see firsthand that kind of build and exit kind of approach. And I think you're exactly right. There has been a whole generation of entrepreneurs or a whole segment of business leaders who've really uh, been conditioned or just uh, found the easiest path was to build for exit or build for a liquidity event, and this is just um, really antithetical to the way I have come to think of building a business and building a culture, building a workplace that people build their lives in and around.
Right.
And I think as I went through that process, participating in the sale of the old company I was with to private equity, I really kind of saw the cultural carnage that ensued after that.
Right.
And you and I have had a lot of conversations about that. You know, my experience. I have been glad to hear kind of how your experience tracked in you know a similar manner. It really struck me that as believers, as you mentioned, we have an opportunity to build for the long run, and we have an opportunity to build on time horizons that others aren't thinking about. And so this concept that's kind of come to be known as kind of evergreen business models, businesses
Yeah.
that are are privately held. They are built for profitable cash flow. They're not built for enterprise value and a big multiple exit. Um, I think that provides an alternative. I think it really resonates with the opportunities we have to build organizations that are faithful reflections of our faith and values. So I think there's
Yes.
a very great tie-in with our worldview, and I believe fundamentally that the economics are better. I think
Mhm.
if you're willing to be patient, if you're willing to put in the long run, I think we're creating better value for shareholders. As an owner, I think it's better. I think we're creating better value for our employees by providing consistency of vision, culture,
Yes.
stability, longevity, all those things. And then I think you have just an unparalleled opportunity to impact your communities when you're building businesses in communities where you're raising your kids. And we know the churches and the community in each of the places where we have operations, and that means something to us. That if this was just abstracted to one asset class in our portfolio, like you would have in a private equity situation, there's certainly greater opportunity for disconnect. So that's a little bit of kind of how I've been thinking about that.
I think you're absolutely right, and I have done a number of exits over the years, and I think two of them to private equity, and I saw just the way that they thought about business, and the employees and the the cogs in the wheel, that we all ended up being just all part of a spreadsheet. And I learned a lot from private equity about how to build a business. My first sale was to a Palo Alto private equity group. Learned a ton about business because I didn't go to college. I didn't get the MBA, and they gave me a lot of that background information.
Yeah.
So Camden, are there any
Yep.
businesses? And it's so funny because if you think of like a local welding business, they're not going to go raise $1 million to do a thing. They might get a line of credit to buy some equipment, but they're
Right.
really
Right.
just
Right.
trying to be like that's a normal business. That's what I think Proverbs talks
Yeah.
about when it talks about good business, capitalism, all that.
Yeah.
Are there any businesses that you think, man, the only way to do that is to just raise a stink load of money and go out there and scale
Yeah.
like mad? Or do you think that
Yeah. Yeah.
that's just not the right way to do it for any business?
No, that's a very astute question because I feel like there are certain business models when there's winner take all or winner take most
Right,
kind of models. Um, it's not a coincidence that our kind of VC to private equity kind of pipeline started in Silicon Valley, and it really was, and in some cases, arguably may be the most appropriate funding mechanism for starting businesses with high network effect kind of things, where you have to have, you got two sides of a marketplace,
yeah,
you got those kind of dilemmas. I think if you're in network effect kind of business models in undifferentiated spaces, so where you don't have like a really defined niche. If you're trying to, start the next Uber or whatever, or the
right,
Instacart or something like that. I mean, those were always the kind of businesses that did lend to uh, to the big the big dip where you're pre-profit, pre-revenue. A lot of those models are
right.
trying to go for scale so fast. Yeah, I would probably readily concede that if this evergreen path, if that appeals to an entrepreneur, it's best to pick a industry segment that's compatible with that. But gosh, as I
Yeah.
think about a lot of those, I don't know, aside from mass market SaaS, kind of, software as a service kind of things. I don't know if I'm probably struggling off the cuff to find a lot of other examples. I think many of the businesses where you're moving um, uh, you're moving physical product,
Yeah.
service businesses, those kind of things. Anything, brick and mortar. I think you've got a great opportunity. I think entrepreneurs have a great opportunity to grow that outside of the typical path that leads to ultimately selling.
Right, and always, and when you build your business around an exit, and I've seen this a lot, you tend to kind of cut corners on a number of things because look, I'm just trying to make it another 2 years until I make
Right.
that big exit. And
Yeah.
it changes your whole mindset. And I was part of this Bay Area company. It was actually a profitable technology business in the Bay Area that we decided. And I was not on the executive team. I was just part of but I got a front row seat and watched what $32 million of venture capital money coming in, trying to become a .com, changed our entire mindset from how do we be profitable to how do we lose $8 million a year and just burn through this capital and grow at all cost. It changed everything about the business. I thought in a lot of very unhealthy ways. I was talking to an entrepreneur recently, and they're like, "Well, I mean, you think about it, like these private equity firms, if they're going to pay me 20 times profit, like that saves
Yeah.
me 20 years of this stuff."
Yeah.
But I would argue the private equity people's, they're not idiots, right? They're doing this on purpose. They know that the economics of buying that business are good, right? Now, they may
Sure.
just be buying it and they're going to try and find a bigger fish who will buy
Yeah.
it, and then they're going to find a bigger fish, and then maybe it goes public, maybe it goes back to private, but it's all about
Yeah.
the transaction rather
Yeah.
than the business fundamentals. In fact, I've found it's a lot easier to raise money than it is to create revenue, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
easier
Yeah.
to
Certainly.
talk people
Yeah.
out of $1 million that
Yeah.
is an investment rather than something where they're actually paying you money. So,
Well, and
um,
I think you're hitting on a really great thing about to what extent is management running a business for the business fundamentals?
right,
Because you can manage um, for an EBITDA inflection or whatever,
right,
and you end up just in a short-sighted um, uh, kind of world where I think, yeah, it's shortcuts. I think it does overall just degrade the value of the business, and it's a shift in mindset because when you are focused on the business fundamentals, you're gonna treat your people differently,
right.
and that with people being our most important asset. Um, you want to build a profitable business so that you're providing well for everyone involved in your company, and I think that is the fundamental decoupling that happens when you're building for exit. If I'm building for exit as an owner, I am I'm building for a story. I'm building a story to sell to private equity guys, and that success in that world is going to be disproportionately allocated to me and not to my employees, right? Because I'm the one who's gonna get the $1 billion check or whatever everybody's trying to sell their business for, and when we're all in this together, when we're playing for keeps, my success as an owner is highly correlated to the success of every man and woman on the team, and I
Yeah.
think that paradigm shift that just kind of um, that communicated value that we're all in this together,
Yeah.
just creates the opportunity for buy-in and alignment that's I think really hard to get if you're playing for the transaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen a lot of private equity companies. I've been involved in them watching where in the first year of the acquisition, they're going to go and try and bolt on a bunch of companies. They're going to hire a bunch of sales reps. They're going to overpay their sales reps because they don't care. They're not
Yep.
trying to build profitable business. They're trying to juice it up. And
Yep.
then before the exit, a year before the exit, so you have a nice trend, you start laying off those sales reps, you start cutting costs, and all of a sudden you have a bigger revenue, a higher
Yep.
margin, and you do this multiple arbitrage. So you obviously started Maddox and
Yep.
have built it to a significant business that is growing incredibly. I don't want to go
Yeah.
into anything
Thanks.
that might be private,
No. No.
but
Yep.
I'd love to. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people out there saying that's impossible. It's not even
Yeah.
possible. So, talk us
Yeah.
through the
Sure.
early days. Like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
did it
Yeah.
take to build this business without going out and raising $100 million? I assume
Right.
you didn't,
No. No.
and
Did not. Did
and
not.
build it and be able to grow it without having that uh, kind of
Yeah.
distorting mindset in place.
Sure, sure, sure. Well, I think one is a discipline to grow within our means, and the Lord has tremendously blessed our story, um, and we've had a great, um, the right product at the right time.
Mm.
For those that don't know, we sell electrical transformers, and so we're in a place, in case folks haven't heard, where energy demand is on the rise. So
Yes, it
we're
is.
using more of it. So it's a good time to be selling energy and energy related products. And so we've had market alignment, and that's more than we can really take credit for. Um, the pace of the temptation to grow beyond specifically your financing, if we're talking
Yeah.
about that element of it, um, is real, and yet there's there's a real benefit to being constrained by the business fundamentals, as you mentioned a little while ago. Um, you have to kind of figure out how to be profitable through that growth, and that challenges your assumptions about the market. That challenges your assumptions about the value you're creating. And having that pressure all along the way is, I think, build stronger businesses. So in the Maddox story, we did start with a couple $1 million of investor funds, and then
Hmm.
bootstrapped from there. We were fortunate to have paid all that back in the first couple of years,
Mm.
and worked ourselves out of that, and then have since then run on operating cash flow and some traditional financing, largely just bank,
Yeah.
line of credit,
Line of
bank
credit, yeah,
financing.
because you got a
Yeah,
lot of equipment, right? You got to be
yeah.
buying these transformers, refurbishing them, and so you can sell them again. And there's a gap in there that sometimes requires some cash.
Exactly, exactly. So that's been our path. Really, no sophisticated capital stack,
Yeah.
or financial engineering. Really, kind of a modest structure. But that can be done if you've got the right, kind of operational controls in place, the right discipline to not get over your skis. Um, our story is one in which we just crossed the 10-year mark, and we've closed out the previous 9 years, doubling the size of the business every 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. It's
And
incredible.
so yeah, it's been a great ride, but you can finance that internally. I think the belief that scale and velocity inherently require um, a lot of external financing. Anybody can model that, and you
Right.
can you can kind of understand your operating cash needs, and you can in our case, double the business over, every time period in there, within that. And our business is not extraordinary. I mean, it's profitable, but it's within the realm of comparable, yeah, of industry comps.
Yeah. No,
So
that's
yeah.
yeah. It is incredible. And how did you pick Transformers? Did that just kind of
Yeah.
happen to you, or what? Where did it start?
Right. Yeah. So I was a software engineer by background. That was what I came up doing, and went to work for a company that was in this space. Started out as a software engineer, and then a manager, and got into sales, and got into management, and just kind of worked my way up there. It was taking that initial discipline, my initial technical field, and um, working for a company in the industry. Fell in love with the business model,
Hmm.
and yeah, just that exposure made me really appreciate the opportunity we had here. And so when the other company sold, I was free to start from scratch, and off to the races we were.
Get after it. I love that.
Yeah,
As you've continued to grow this, and we'll just call it an evergreen business, right? This is
yeah,
something
yeah,
you hope to,
certainly.
as
Yeah,
I understand, hand down to your kids.
sure. Yeah, yeah,
Never know
yeah,
what the Lord has, but that's the
sure.
plan. How
Yeah,
does it change how you think about hiring and
yeah,
developing people?
yeah.
I often talk to these businesses that are venture backed, and they're like, we have to buy we have to buy someone, we have to hire someone
Right,
who
right.
is like a high end VP ready to go, drive
So,
value because we have such a tight time frame. Is
yeah.
that different when you're in a larger evergreen business?
Completely,
Yeah,
completely. So the first thing it does is changes our time horizon. So
right.
we're working with people that we hope to be working with for the next 20 plus years.
Yeah,
And so we are able to make kind of relational investments that we intend to live with it for decades.
yeah,
And so that allows us to make our investments based on character and on the fundamentals of who that person is, and then train those skills. And you hear that language a lot. If you're hiring first for character and then training the skills, but if you're doing that in a 3 to 5 year time horizon, like you mentioned, what are we really talking about? It's we're saying
yeah,
that, but we really, we're trying to get the spreadsheet to move in that short period of time. So
right.
it allows us to develop a lot of in-house talent that would
Yeah,
just be hard to do on those tighter time horizons. Then it also gives us a alignment and motivation to do that. If we
right.
were planning on, being out of this business in a few years. Um, why would we? In our case, we want to be working with the same people 20 years from now. So
Yeah.
we're highly motivated to work with the best people and to make the investments to make them better.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's almost like having the difference between having a rental home and having a home you own, right? If you've got a
Yeah.
rental home, like, and something breaks,
Yep.
you're like, well, I'm going to be out
Yep.
of here soon, or I don't really own it. I'm just looking to sell it. I'm just trying to flip this sucker. Whereas, like, no,
Yep.
this is our home.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And if there's a problem, if there's an employee problem, if there's a structural problem, if there's a, supply chain problem, well, you actually want to solve it in a different way because you're trying to build for the future, which I think is a great mindset, and I think more Americans, and I think particularly
Yep.
the folks in the, I'll call it, freedom economy, who are
Yeah.
trying to be very thoughtful about their business, to use it as a tool to bless their communities, their employees, their shareholders,
Yep.
just need to think about it differently because I think
Yeah.
it's a better way to do things.
I
Um,
think you're right, and I think there is a sense in which some of this, like that evergreen business, that kind of vocabulary is a little bit new to me. I've just kind of come into that as I've heard
yeah,
others talk about it in recent years. But really, what we're talking about is really a harkening back to the way business used to be done. And this,
yeah,
there didn't used to be a sense in which you were building for exit. You were building to hand down, maybe it's your kids, maybe it's other, succession plans, whatever it is. But that was the way to do it. That was the old way to do it.
yeah,
And there's still examples. If we look at some of the big successful holding companies, I guess Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett just stepping down. But you see what Berkshire Hathaway has done. They're playing in a similar kind of model where they're buying these businesses, if it's See's Candy or
right,
Progressive Insurance or whatever. They're buyers, not sellers. They're going to buy
yes,
these businesses for value. They're going to invest in them in the long run. And to your question earlier about people and the kind of opportunities and the paradigm shift there, they've moved folks around. The new the guy replacing Warren Buffett, Greg Abel,
yeah,
had run a number of their businesses. And so
hmm,
when you have this kind of mindset, it can work at small scale. It can work at almost, I'll call it kind of the mom and pop kind of scale. Or if you go all the way up to that popular example of Berkshire Hathaway, in that example, you see their commitments to long time horizons. You see their commitments to developing careers and at scale, you have some unique opportunities where, they'll take a CEO from one of their companies and move them to be the CEO here, or uh, you know, whatever the positions may be. That gives folks who are aligned with that organization tremendous mobility,
Yep.
and the confidence that their company is going to be there and has their back, and
Yeah.
Lord willing, will continue to do so.
Well, and it's interesting when I think about building company culture and building loyalty. Like, if you, as the owner of the business or the CEO, are just thinking on always a 3 to 5 or less year time horizon,
Yep,
and then you're like, well, why are my employees not loyal? Why don't they want to stay around and build this thing? Or they're just jumping for the next biggest paycheck to next business. Well, that's exactly what you are doing as a business owner. Do
exactly.
you see that kind of
Yeah,
ramification of cultural impact within the business when
yeah,
you think about it differently as an owner?
I do. I mean, the fact that it provides a constancy of purpose, and a culture that they can rely on.
Yes.
Even if somebody's really aligned with the way I lead am leading the business today. If it was going to be a new leadership next week or whatever, yeah, sure, yeah. I mean, it would be incredibly deflating on people,
Right.
building their lives, around a business like that. So certainly, yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wonder, how do you think it impacts the culture of America when most business leaders, at least over the last couple of decades, have had this
yeah,
very short term thinking? Do you think that's kind of changed the way we think about our nation, we think about our interactions with other nations, or even politics?
yeah. Great question. Um, You know, uh, my pastor here in Battleground, Washington, is C.R. Wiley, a good friend
Yeah.
of both of ours. And he had mentioned something the other day that got me thinking. He was saying that, talking about Americans' confidence in their institutions, and
Yes.
they had Congress, the presidency,
Way down.
the various,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
He had all these different things. Small businesses was one of the categories,
Yeah.
and the institution, if we'll say it that way, that Americans have the most confidence in, have the most trust,
Yeah.
was is small businesses.
Right.
And I was kind of, you're kind of giving that some thought, and
Hmm.
I it does occur to me that small businesses are businesses in which individual people, there's a guy that owns a coffee shop that I go to, or the pub or whatever.
Right.
There's an individual person who I can know, like, and trust
Yes.
behind those small businesses. I think that's a big part of it. I think the fact that we kind of um, treat businesses like an asset class, and like we're swapping baseball cards or something like that,
Right.
I think it degrades it. I think there's
Right.
something about that, yes, I think it does degrade trust, because big corporations were not, it's small businesses that people trust. It's
Right.
not, it's not the larger ones. I think there's something there. I think you're hitting on something important.
Yeah, and when your business is being run by a spreadsheet out of New York City, it makes everything impersonal,
Yeah.
and that has a big impact. Unfortunately, I was in Florida. I was meeting with a businessman. He's like, unfortunately, I think the pastors of America are not strong enough to fight in this culture war, so the business people need to step up. Now, I
Mhm.
would disagree. We need strong pastors, and
Right, right,
business
right,
people without strong pastors, you're gonna create a whole different set of problems. But I think the
right,
point
right, right.
was, we as business people need to live our values out loud, and that should have an impact on the length, the time horizon of our thinking. And when politics are short-term thinking, when the news cycle is about 38 seconds, when business cycle is a 3 to 5 year horizon, when pastors are jumping from church to church to try and get the big upgrade, it just changes our culture. And I think we need to get back to a healthier spot of kind of long term thinking. And I'm grateful you're leading with a very big and significant business in thinking this direction. Camden, any kind of
Well said.
final words of advice or input for the business owners who are,
Yeah,
they're in the trenches, they're just trying to start this thing. It's
right.
very tempting to get the millions of dollars of funding and get on the road that
Yeah,
ends in an exit. What
yeah,
would you say to
yeah.
them?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think for folks starting out, I think maintaining the right vision, understanding that it's about the alignment with like-minded people. That's been the determining factor. Humanly speaking, I think that's really what I look to. So I think I would encourage folks to. Um, to find people to build with, find good people that like, and
Mhm.
trust, and get to work. There's a lot to build.
Yeah, absolutely. When the settlers moved west, there were no jobs, but man, there was a lot of work to do.
A lot
And
of work.
there's a lot of work to do today.
Yeah,
Camden, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think we could talk all day about this, but alas, my AV guy's telling me, Andrew, it's time to be done. So, very
thank you so
grateful.
much.
And thank you, everybody who's listening. I hope that this changes your behavior, that changes the way you're thinking about business. Business is a vehicle to bless people at scale. And if you can really get your head wrapped around it like that, as a long-term thing that you're going to use to bless your customers, bless your employees, and bless your shareholders, when you think about it like that, man, business is so rewarding, and it's such, it's not that evil empire that a lot of people think of when they come to big business. Business can be one of the greatest institutions for blessing in our society. And Camden's mirroring that right now, and I'm pretty excited to have him in this conversation. I hope everybody has an amazing day, and I hope that you think differently about your business, tell friends about it, and if you found this conversation helpful, please tell other people to jump on the pipeline and listen to what we're saying here, because we want Christians and conservatives to think differently about business, bless their customers, and have an amazing day.